This is the MOJO Weekly News.
Good evening. Here's the man who killed international student Aiia Maasarwe as she was walking home from a night out. But on Tuesday, Codey Herrmann's fate was revealed in the Supreme Court of Victoria. Earlier this month, he pleaded guilty to raping the Israeli student before bashing her to death. The victim's family making the heartbreaking final journey to Melbourne to see her killer face justice.
Codey Herrmann has been sentenced to 36 years behind bars for the rape and murder of 21-year-old international student Aiia Maasarwe. The 21-year-old appeared in the Victorian Supreme Court, where Justice Elizabeth Hollingworth sentenced him to serve at least 30 years in jail before he will be eligible for parole.
Miss Maasarwe was doing nothing more than walking along a public street on her way home from a night out, as she had every right to do.
At 20 years of age at the time of the attack, Codey Herrmann raped and murdered Aiia near a Bundoora shopping centre in January. He used a can of WD-40 and a lighter in an attempt to burn her body and erase any evidence.
Whenever a woman is brutally attacked by a stranger in public, understandably it causes other women to feel less safe going about their ordinary daily lives.
Aiia Maasarwe's family dreamed of travelling to Australia to visit her. Instead, they made the heartbreaking journey to attend her killer's sentence on Tuesday afternoon. Aia's father wiped away tears as he spoke outside the Supreme Court in Melbourne after coming face to face with his daughter's killer in person for the first time.
I hope our blues, Aiia.
Instead of revenge, he called on the Australian authorities to do more for its people.
All the department here, I wish and I hope he will care more for the people. He can go back home, can go back to his family safely. I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, he can go continue his life as normal.
Justice Hollingworth said that Herrmann's sentencing was similar to James Todd, who raped and murdered 22-year-old Eurydice Dixon. But Todd is facing maximum sentence of life behind bars, whilst 21-year-old Codey Herrmann could be out by his early 50s. His age, personality disorder and hopeful prospects of rehabilitation were taken into consideration by Her Honour, as well as pleading guilty at an early stage, which saw him avoid a life sentence in prison.
Why did you do these appalling things? Unfortunately, as your counsel frankly acknowledged, there is no simple explanation for your actions.
However, for Aia's family and friends, his time behind bars simply won't change the fact that she'll never return home. Brittany Coles, MOJO News.
If you thought the Spring Rebellion climate protests were over, well, think again. Activists have taken to the streets, this time targeting the International Mining and Resources Conference, a gathering that brings together some of the world's biggest coal, oil and gas leaders.
Banging on the windows and shouting as loud as possible, trying to interrupt a gathering of global mining leaders.
But I mean, this mining conference is such an incredible carnival of just human rights abuses, climate change, catastrophic acceleration of climate change, the murdering of animal species all over the world, workers' rights abuses and union busting.
Protesters took their fight for climate action to city again this week, targeting the International Mining and Resources Conference. Held at the Melbourne Convention Centre, the conference brings together 7,000 of the world's biggest mining leaders, and climate activists weren't happy.
So, mining companies have destroyed the place. They're no good for anybody. It's only all the wealth gets taken out of the country. These mining companies are multinationals, and they're taking all the wealth out of it. And even the people don't see the wealth, and let alone the Aboriginal people whose land it is, they're destroying.
Protesters tried to block delegates from entering the convention centre, chanting loudly to drown out their conference. Dozens were arrested as violent clashes broke out between police and protesters.
Huge plans have been made by the protesters for the Australian Latin American dinner at the end of the conference. However, the rest are being kept a secret in order to cause major disruptions.
Caused disruptions they did. Marching along the city streets, blocking roads and creating traffic gridlock, a pain commuters thought they wouldn't have to experience just weeks after the Spring Rebellion protests. Karuna Balasubramanian, MOJO News.
And now here's Olivia Jenkins with a look back at the rest of the week's top stories.
An Irish truck driver has been charged with manslaughter after British police discovered 39 migrants dead in the back of his lorry in Essex, east of London. 25-year-old Mo Robinson has been charged with 39 counts of manslaughter among a slew of trafficking charges after being questioned by police for more than 72 hours. Robinson is believed to have opened the refrigerated container to collect some paperwork and passed out when he found the migrants dead after they reportedly froze to death. Robinson appeared in court on Monday. Ivan Milat, Australia's most prolific serial killer, has died aged 74 from terminal esophagus and stomach cancer in the early hours of Sunday morning. The former road worker was sentenced in 1996 to 7 life sentences for murdering 7 backpackers whose bodies were found in shallow graves in New South Wales' Belanglo State Forest in the 90s. Milat never admitted to the killings and has been linked to a string of other unsolved murders. Uluru was officially closed to climbers on Friday, exactly 34 years after the World Heritage listed site was handed back to its traditional owners. Amid public celebrations commemorating the ban, hundreds of visitors climbed the top tourist spot before having to leave at sunset. The ban marks a decades-long fight by Indigenous people who have been calling for the climb to close due to Uluru's historical connection to their ancestors. The Trump administration has confirmed the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi following a targeted strike by US Special Operations Forces in Syria on Saturday. Al-Baghdadi is believed to have detonated a suicide vest while a US Special Mission Unit carried out a ground raid in Idlib, northwest of Syria. Al-Baghdadi's death follows a previous assassination attempt in 2017 when US Special Forces blew up a compound where he was believed to have been during the attack. And a pup in Melbourne South East has set his Ringwood home ablaze just minutes after his owners left the house. Archie, a 10-month-old Bulldog Terrier cross, has been dubbed Archie the Arson after causing about $60,000 worth of damage to his owner's home while playing with a jet lighter, forcing his owner to move out of home for more than a month. Flames took hold for more than 20 minutes before firefighters broke in and extinguished the blaze.
Dozens of Year 12 students have been hit with a nasty gastro outbreak just days before sitting their final exams. An estimated 39 students, parents and teachers became sick after attending a graduation dinner at Flemington Racecourse, but the health department has cleared the venue of any blame.
What was meant to be remembered as a special night for school leavers and their families of Footscray City College is now being remembered as a night of misery and pain. One family of a Year 12 student at the school said the night was full of good spirits, but the Victorian Health Department was notified that 39 people had symptoms of gastro after a graduation at Flemington Racecourse on October 18. The family we spoke to told us the sister of a Year 12 student at the college had been extremely unwell and still can't stomach anything more than bland food like toast and steamed rice. More than a week on, thankfully her older brother is fine and will be well enough to sit his Year 12 exams this week, but other students haven't been as lucky. The function venue has since been inspected by the City of Melbourne, who has granted approval for the venue to open and operate as normal.
A victim of child sex abuse has told of her ordeal and is encouraging other victims to speak out against such vile acts. She was motivated by the Let Her Speak campaign, which empowers victims of rape to take their voices back. This story contains content that may be disturbing for some viewers.
It's one of the most unspeakable and hated of crimes. The innocence of a child stolen in a matter of seconds. Laura was molested as a child from the time she was 10 years old to around 12 years old. Due to the horrific trauma this has had on her life, her timeline of the events is hazy.
I was very close with a really good friend of mine when I was younger, and I was very close to her family. And so her father had access to me as a child because I was constantly over at her house. Things kind of progressed in such a way that I didn't really, I guess, understand what was going on. I didn't understand that it was wrong. And then I think like the sexual stuff it was easier for me to trust, and for him to be able to, I guess, use his power. I froze. I know that I froze during those moments. I just didn't know what to do. It's always a secret. I know this whole abuse for me was a secret. And you're told to keep it a secret, that people won't understand, that it's so sacred, it's so special, it's just between the two of us, nobody will understand.
Laura's perpetrator was eventually convicted, but upon finding out this news, she says the guilt that was there was too much for her to bear.
I struggled with a lot of guilt because I didn't realise that it was actually abuse.
According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, 11% of women and 5% of men report being abused before the age of 15.
In terms of speaking your truth, speaking your story, it's definitely something that I would hope to be able to do more in my future, after more healing is done. I'm still working on it. It is frightening. It is scary. Not being anonymous as well. But I think it's important to be able to reclaim your voice and get your voice back, and to be able to stop the silence.
If you're affected by any of the content mentioned in this story, call Lifeline on 131114, or you can contact Blue Knot, a hotline for child abuse survivors, on 1300 657 380. David Bonadio, MOJO News.
A woman is appealing to the public to help track down a couple whose dog lunged at her and bit into her arm while she was walking in East Bentley, causing her to need surgery. The same dog charged at her again.
Karen Venuto was allegedly attacked by a dog on October 13th on Alexander Street. However, what is more shocking is, according to her, the owners tried to intimidate her again by lunging the dog at her just 2 weeks later.
A dog approached me with its owner and he jumped up, and I thought it was friendly, so I patted it and he jumped again and he bit me, and I grabbed my arm like this, and the owner said, "Oh, he likes you," and then took off. And I thought I was okay, and then I started to get really sick, and I went to South Yarra Station to ask for some Panadol and some Band-Aids, and that's when they called the ambulance. And the ambulance came and said, because it's broken, there's puncture wounds, and it needs stitches, and it needs to have surgery most likely. On Saturday, we just had, on the 26th, I saw them again. They let the dog loose a little bit, and it went like this, and she said Holly or Molly, called it Holly and Molly, one of those names, and pulled it back. So it went for me again.
According to Ms. Venuto, police refused to file a case as this was not a police matter. Glen Eira Council is investigating the case using TVC cameras. Sheetal Singh, MOJO News.
2 victims of child sex abuse met with Prime Minister Scott Morrison last week to discuss the repatriation of their alleged perpetrator, who has been on the run since 2013. Political correspondent David Bonadio joins us now. David, what's the latest?
Chester, Das Ehrlich and Nicole Meyer are former students from Addis School in Elstonwick and have sought out help from the Prime Minister in Canberra in this last week to extradite their former principal Malka Leifer. It's alleged Leifer molested Das, Nicole and 7 other girls in her care. Leifer has been charged with 74 counts of child sex abuse. The Prime Minister told the media that the matter was before the justice system in Israel and called for the matter to be resolved transparently and quickly. Prime Minister Morrison also called for a stand in solidarity and acknowledged their traumatic experience and bravery. State Secretary of the CFMEU, John Sedka, has been expelled from the Labor Party for good after a 2-month battle with the Supreme Court to reverse this decision. Sedka withdrew his appeal to interject his expulsion last Wednesday. Sedka came under fire after he had allegedly accused Rosie Batty of harming men's rights. Rosie Batty's son was killed in a domestic violence incident in 2014. At the time, Sedka claimed that his comments were taken out of context and that he had great respect for Rosie Batty. Labor Party leader Anthony Albanese said that it was important that the Labor Party demonstrated that its values are greater than any one individual. In particular, the Labor Party's respect for women. Division on drought policy in Canberra continues as one half of the coalition, the Nationals' $1.3 billion drought plan was leaked in a bid to win voters long term for the 2022 election. This comes after the National Farmers Federation's demands for the government to help pay for council rates in a bid to keep farmers from exiting the land. The Morrison government is still said to be weighing up proposals on how best to support the farmers, with Resource Minister Matt Canavan downplaying the disunity between the Liberals and the Nationals. Senator Canavan says he's much more interested in finding ways to keep Australians on the land and doesn't want to rush to have people go to the exit. The opposition leader Anthony Albanese says the government's plan shouldn't just deal with the immediate measures, but include a long-term strategy incorporating climate change. More details of the Morrison government's first home buyers deposit scheme pitched during the 2019 election campaign has emerged, with price caps announced at $700,000 for a house in Sydney and $600,000 in Melbourne. First home buyers will only have to save 5% of their house deposit as opposed to 20%. According to the proposal, applicants must have earned less than $125,000 in a year as a single or $200,000 as a couple. Housing Minister Michael Sukkar promised that no layers of bureaucracy would be added and banks would conduct the same credit checks on customers as they already do. The scheme will be available from January 2020. Chester.
All right, David, we'll leave it there. Thank you. And now here's sport with Brittany Coles.
Thanks, Chester. Moonee Valley was indeed Money Valley last weekend as Japanese horse Lee Gracier claimed the $5 million Cox Plate title. The win saw jockey Damien Lane add the Cox Plate to his victories, along with the Caulfield Cup and Golden Slipper this year. The race was played out in the wake of an ABC 7:30 report which detailed widespread slaughter of former racehorses in Australian abattoirs. However, all eyes will now be on Flemington this coming weekend as the Melbourne Cup Carnival begins with Derby Day this Saturday in monochrome fashion. The Hockeyroos are now a step closer to the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Over in Perth last Friday, they fought to win 4-2 over Russia in the first leg of their sudden death matches. The Aussie women's team is ranked second in the world and are off to a strong start to the qualifying series. To the World Cup now, and England defeated the All Blacks to reach the World Cup final for the first time since 2007. New Zealand came into last Saturday's semi-final against England on an 18-match unbeaten streak, but England defied the odds and ran to a 19-7 win. The Kiwis were clearly heartbroken over the devastating loss, releasing a rather funny front page of the New Zealand Herald Sunday paper. On a black front page, tiny writing said, "The All Blacks are out of the World Cup. If you want to read more, go to the sports section." Continuing England's victorious week, Leicester City now ties the biggest win in Premier League history with a 9-0 win over Southampton. Leicester's win equals Manchester United's 9-0 win over Ipswich back in 1995. Matilda's captain Sam Kerr has added another accolade to her long list of achievements, this time being named the MVP of the US National Women's Soccer League. She scored a league record 18 goals this season for the Chicago Red Stars, but she refused to accept the award alone, crediting her success to all of her teammates. Australia is out to end Sri Lanka's hot T20 streak. The T20 World Cup season began at Adelaide Oval between the two nations on Sunday. The MCG is set to host the final match of the 3-game series opener this Friday night. That's all happening on the eve of Derby Day. It's certainly going to be an eventful weekend across Melbourne's sporting greens. Chester.
Yeah, what a week in sport and a massive week ahead, Brittany. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of Mojo News for this week and for the rest of the year. You can find more content from our team on mojonews.com.au. But for now, though, I'm Tristan Hahn. Good night.